Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about marijuana, cannabis use, and its pharmacokinetic effects in the body and what it's essentially used for practically. But just a reminder before all that, I am not a doctor and I am not a chemist, and I do not pretend to be either one of those things. I do not encourage the use of any substances, legal or illegal, in this video strictly for educational and entertainment purposes only. So first and foremost, there's two main basic compounds within cannabis, CBD and THC. And CBD on its own is not nearly as psychoactive. I mean, it's has some level of psychoactivity from what we've been able to determine, but not in the same in the same vein as THC. THC is the way that people will get essentially high from cannabis and marijuana, weed. I don't know if I should call which one I should call it. I don't want to seem like a fed. But overall, when it comes to the pharmacokinetic profiles, CBD can actually be inhibitory on THC, and the differences in different strands and things of different marijuana plants can be the difference between a really calming sensation with a high level of CBD and a lower level of THC, or the inverse, very a very creative feeling from THC and a lower level of CBD. Overall, there's been a lot more science coming out that CBD is very inhibitory to THC. Which is very interesting. There's actually been some research that shows that if you smoke marijuana and then you inject straight isolated CBD in a very high concentration into the human body, you can actually get the person to be not high anymore, which is a very weird thing. Obviously, that was very preliminary testing, and it wasn't really done in a very good laboratory setting. But overall, that's one thing to be considered, is the level of CBD to THC. They've also found that CBD in high concentrations has been helping a lot of people with epilepsy. Apparently, it has, because it has inhibitory effects in certain parts of the brain, it's been helping to reduce the amount of epileptic seizures, I believe specifically in the amygdala. I could be wrong. I'm not familiar too much with the literature on epilepsy reactions, but to my understanding, whatever part of the brain most frequently set off in an epileptic seizure is inhibited by CBD. And then when it comes to the THC side, a lot of people think, oh, CBD is the one with all the uses, but THC actually has a lot of uses as well. So for people who are going through HIV treatment or are cancer patients, when they take it can stimulate hunger. So a lot of these people are losing weight dramatically, and they're very, very malnourished, and they just can't eat. And it stimulates the ghrelin receptor in the body, to my understanding. I could have the wrong mechanism of action, but overall it makes them more hungry. I mean, everybody's heard of the munchies, but it makes them eat more, and overall that helps them to at least have a more sustainable body weight when they're going through treatments. And on top of that, it also helps to fight off nausea for people going through cancer treatments. Obviously, that's very important for a lot of people, because nausea with chemotherapy is beyond brutal. On top of that, there's also delta-8 THC, which is, to my understanding, derived from a different plant. So that's part of the reason it was legal, is because it wasn't actually derived from the marijuana plant. So therefore, you could create a psychoactive compound very similar to delta 9 THC, which is what normal THC is, and have similar effects. It's a lot less psychoactive, and to my understanding, most people just report euphoria off of it and less of the other things. I've also heard of people reporting, like in higher dosages, reporting stuff that happens with actual marijuana, like couch lock and anxiety, paranoia. I mean, same thing that can happen with normal delta 9 THC in higher dosages. But again, it's very person to person. Obviously, there's a small amount of literature to suggest that persons who have never tried THC in general could induce a schizophrenic episode if they have a genetic propensity towards schizophrenia, but I don't know how well versed the literature is on that. When it comes to using it in a pharmaceutical sense, I don't really know which method of use is prescribed. I don't know if they prescribe smoking. I haven't heard of that, but I've also heard of medical marijuana cards and where you go and pick up marijuana. I think the most common for a lot of people is to do edibles. And so edibles can become much more powerful in the body depending on liver metabolism strength, but because it gets metabolized in the liver, because everything you consume orally will get metabolized in the liver. If you know anything about steroids, they'll get metabolized in the liver. Adderall metabolized in the liver, Zoloft, all that stuff metabolized in the liver. And when it gets metabolized in the liver, it turns into a metabolite that is, I think, 7 times stronger than normal delta-9 THC. So that's why you can take so little of it and have such a huge reaction when you consume it. Oftentimes a very delayed one at that, I should add, because some people will purport waiting 30 minutes to an hour and a half before anything happens. And they're like, that's where the joke, this edible ain't shit, comes from, where, they're sitting around after taking an edible and it's like, dang, this is weak. And then they're like, whoa, and it kicks in. But overall, I mean, it has a lot of potential uses in the medical industry. It's a pretty not harmful. It doesn't have a lot of harmful pharmacokinetics. Obviously, anything that gets to the point of somebody's changing their lifestyle around it, like if they're actively like neglecting, their life because they're obsessed with this thing, just like hardcore methamphetamine use, then it becomes an issue. But the thing is, typically speaking, it's very hard to get to that point. And you have to have like an addictive personality. You probably started it before you were even 20. And overall, even then, a lot of people don't ever consider to be addicted to it. They can stop for weeks on end and then start using again if they want to, because it's really not considered to be highly habit forming. But that doesn't mean it doesn't come without withdrawals. There are people who take it or who do use marijuana regularly, maybe every day, and will experience withdrawal syndromes. That actually is a problem. A lot of people don't realize that is something that can happen. For some people, it's severe, just like everything. For some people, it's severe, it's crazy, it's intense. For some people, it's, as mild as getting off of caffeine. I mean, and then again, with caffeine, there's also a range. So it just comes down to everybody's individual response to the medication, or in this case, weed. But the fact of the matter is, it has potential pharmacological uses. So there's obviously the oral administration, the vapable administration, and the actual smoking administration. There's also bongs and things, but I'm not well versed in that, and I'm not going to act like I am. The vapable administrations, there was a problem with them getting laced with vitamin E lately. That's where actually the scandal about all vaping products being bad for you came from. Vaping products they're most likely not going to cause a lot of damage to people. They're much safer than cigarettes in terms of nicotine, and I would also presume the same when it comes to marijuana use, because they've noticed that people who smoke straight marijuana often have problems with their lungs, not as much as like cigarette smokers or anything, but they do often have problems with their lungs. And so the vaporizers are definitely like a safer alternative. My only thing is, I think it makes a lot more logical sense for those to be in regulated states, like how I live in Virginia, and I know that DC has regulated vapable marijuana. And that seems like a safe bet if somebody wanted to go to use it. And I believe it's legal to bring deck into Virginia as long as you have under a certain amount. But I think that's reasonable because smoking it long term can cause lung damage. To my understanding, I could be getting that wrong, but from the literature I've seen and actually even some of the video testing I've seen when it comes to smoking it, smoke just does damage when you fully inhale it. And then so the vapable version seems like a much more usable thing. And I would imagine that could be also useful for persons who, are going through chemotherapy and need stuff for that. Oh, I almost forgot. It's extremely useful for neuropathic pains. So I believe people who are diabetic often have neuropathic pains. Neuropathic pains are kind of hard to explain. I'm not going to act like I have a full grasp on their complexities, but to my understanding, it's typically pain that shouldn't be presiding from something. But if you have you got your tooth pulled and you have a toothache, smoking weed's not going to help with the pain from getting that tooth out. You're just going to be high now. Maybe the euphoria might help, but overall it typically helps to reduce neuropathic pain. I'm not particularly familiar with that literature, but that is something that's very important. That's honestly one of the main reasons people use marijuana in general is for the pain relieving effects that it can give people. I have heard people say that it can be helpful with non-neuropathic pain, but I don't really know how true that is. I don't think the literature supports it. But as with everything, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a chemist. I could be wrong. Overall, pharmacokinetic profiles look like they could be very useful for a lot of human interventions, a lot of under-eating, and overall malnutrition. It could help people to get their hungers up in case scenarios where they just won't be hungry. So yeah, that's pretty much going to be it for this video. If you guys have any questions, leave them in the comments. I can do more research and deep diving into this if you would like me to. But that's pretty much going to be it. So please like this video if you liked it. And subscribe to the channel, hit that notification bell so you know when my videos come out. And until next time, have a great one.